Just last week, at time of recording, we were very privileged to be able to speak to Bob Lyons from the Alba Road Team. He's been in cycling for a long time, primarily in Scotland, and this Alba Road Team obviously has Scottish roots, but also, it has English riders and an Irish rider. I also believe an American, but please don't quote me on that. Check their website yourself. But yeah, it's great to hear his thoughts ahead of the team's debut at the Women's Tour of Britain, which starts tomorrow at time of recording. So listen in and see what you like from him. Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
No worries. I guess my first question is how did the Alba Road team start? You know, uh, Linguistically, I gather it's going to be quite a Scottish focused team with the name being as it is. But yeah, what was the genesis of the team and your involvement?
So the team's in its third season now, but the team was created really. I've been around cycling quite a lot,
Mm,
um, and something I found a little frustrating. Cycling generally, elite cycling in the UK, but most on the women's side, was that a lot of teams are very much focused on winning, just
mm,
results driven, and that's understandable. As the sponsors, yeah, that's what you want to do. You want to win at the end of the day. So that's not so bad in itself, but there's a bit of a byproduct of that sometimes when you get totally focused on that. In that, if you try to develop riders, the riders almost become secondary to
mm,
that objective. And I wanted to create a different environment in a team that was purely focused on developing of riders. So the prime objective of the team is to move riders to the top of the sport, world tour, preferably, ultimately. So everything's built around the rider and makes it rider centric. So each rider will have their own development plan. The team has development plans, and that all gets put together. We'll make sure all the stakeholders are on the same page, so riders aren't getting pulled between national governing bodies, national teams, different coaches, things like that.
mm.
Everybody speaks, such that we can just put them front and center and trying to get the best out of them. So that's really what underpinned the start of the team. That's what we tried to establish. That's what we're trying to do, and I think we've been successful at that. And as we move forward, and as I keep saying to people, some quite difficult conversations with sponsors at times when you're saying results are not important. I think, well, that sounds a bit weird for a sports team, but it's no. If we get development right, the results will come,
Mm.
and that's what's happening currently. So I think that we continue to learn as we go along, but we've had success with moving Kate. We've got interesting riders this year. We're getting some good results, so it's all coming together in the right way.
Yeah, because you mentioned the good results. Might as well talk about that already. Because you had was it the Tour de Femina? I don't even
Yeah,
know how to pronounce it properly. Like it looks like it should be pronounced that way, but it's in Czechia, so it's
it,
like,
it is. I'll go with your
yeah,
pronunciation. I think that's fine.
yeah. So obviously, Ailey got top three on a couple of stages, and like the AG Insurance under 23s just dominated that race. The top five lockout in the time trial. So obviously to get podiums against them, um, it is a remarkable achievement.
Yeah, it was a great week. Um, we, we've been very focused. I mean, obviously this is our first year UCI, so we've done quite a lot, and it's all been very good so far. But we're trying to do as much stage racing as we can because there's a lot of benefit to that for various reasons. And it was a great week. Yes, I mean, AG Insurance are very strong under 23 team, and they did dominate the race. There's no question about that. But there was some great learnings for us. Ailey had some great results, two podiums and a fifth on the
Mm,
stages. We put ourselves on the back foot on stage one, the time trial, because we elected not to go with time trial bikes. We did that on road bikes, which was still a very good result for us within that stage. And there was lots of learnings. So there was fantastic individual results for Ailey, but the team as a whole just rode superbly well throughout the entire week. They were in the right place, they were doing the right things, and that helped deliver really to the results she got. So there's a ton of learnings to come away, and it's all back to this development piece again from that week. It's also really good for the team as a whole to be at the front end of a race like that and see how a very well drilled, structured team can control a race.
Mm.
That's really valuable learning also. I've just been there because you look at the last stage, the Queen stage, which was a pretty savage day with 9 climbs. Um, and when we came over the last climb, the what was left of the bunch, if that's what you want to call it, was down to
Mm.
35 riders, and we had 5 riders in there, which is, other than AG Insurance, nobody else had a full complement of riders in there. So a really successful week, lots of learning that we can take forward onto everything else. So it's what we're trying to do, basically.
Oh, that's amazing. So obviously you had these great results, and it's really good to see. And you mentioned how the riders have been developing. Like, how do you even go about selecting the riders to take to different races, or even to be part of your roster? Because, like, in my mind, I'm like, it's great that it's all about development, but how do you get, like, there has to be, I guess, a level of criteria for riding for you,
Yeah,
whether that's a minimum standard, or like, how do you choose basically?
yeah, it's quite a tricky one because it's important. If we're keeping true to our objectives, we need a spread of experience within the team.
Mm.
So I'd be quite happy I could go out and build a team of winners and a very, very, very strong team, but that's not what we're trying to do. So you need to have that balance that you've got some inexperience, but lots of potential, through to more experience, ready to make the last step, and everything in between. So
Mm.
that's the starting point with the makeup of the team to get that balance right. And you mentioned minimum criteria, and that's probably where it works because we need to ensure that, okay, our calendar now is focused on, we will support the British National Series. I think that's very important,
Mhm.
to maintain that in the UK and help it continue to grow again after sort of shrinking quite a lot. So we'll do all of the British National Series, but then we've got quite a big overseas calendar being UCI this year. So the minimum criteria really is we need people who are comfortable at an elite national level. Now that doesn't mean winning races, but
Mm.
if you're going to develop riders in races, they need to be in the race. It's pointless taking people who are not ready for that and they get dropped after 5 kilometers. That we can't do anything with that. So we look very carefully at riders from what is their experience, what have they done. We do look at them physiologically, look at all the training data. We also speak to them at length as to what their objectives are because they need to be tuned in themselves to what their objectives are, but it needs to tie in with the team's objectives. And we need to make sure that riders fit. So you can do that quite easily by, looking at data. We might even do some testing with them and speaking to them. But we do have to be comfortable that when we put them in the race environment that they're not going to sink. So that, in very broad terms, it's a bit of an oversimplification, is where the bar's set. And then it gets quite difficult because when we started 3 years ago, the team was effectively not quite handpicked, but primarily all of the riders. It was a new team; nobody had heard of us, so I
Mm.
just approached riders to we thought we would take in, and then things moved from there. Um, if you look at the end of last season, or when we're looking at 2024, I think we had something like, we were approached by just over 70 riders.
Wow.
For now, probably 35, 40 of those were just not ready. It's just people like what they see, and I'd like to have a
Mm.
go at that, and that's fine. And we'll have a conversation with those riders. They're not quite ready. Go away and do this, and this. But the other 20, 30 riders, would fit within the team. So it gets quite difficult then. and it's coming to getting the balance right, as I said, between experience, but also the type of rider do they fit? Because something that we really push quite hard, and it's very important, and again we've been pretty successful with, is having a very strong team environment off the bike away from races.
Mm.
And we have a group of riders who just get on tremendously well, very supportive of each other, happy to speak about everything. We get everything out to discuss, and that fits very well. So we need to make sure that riders fit into that as well, that they'll be comfortable in that sort of environment. So it can be challenging at times. Now it's going to be even harder going into 2025. We're getting, because we've had a pretty good start to the season, we're getting inundated with inquiries for 2025 already.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and is it easy or difficult to kind of generate that culture that you're talking about, that kind of openness and the ability to have those frank discussions?
I don't think I'd describe it as easy, but if you set out to do that and make it quite clear the ethos and how you want to work,
Mm,
I think it becomes quite easy. And you have to work with the riders as a collective to grow that mindset as you start. Things will be very different, particularly if it's new riders and things like that coming at the beginning of the season, and people don't know each other, and you've got to work quite hard at developing that. But no, I don't think it's that difficult, really. So long
mm,
as you give the riders the environment to thrive in that situation.
yeah. In which case, like, what does success look like for the team? Because obviously you've made the jump to UCI level,
Yeah,
and obviously I'll ask how that's going in a minute. But yeah, like at the end of a season, how do you go, oh yes, we've been successful, because results, it's easy because it's
yeah,
kind of black and white. It's, did we hit this result? Development, like,
yeah. So
uh,
yeah, I mean, the ticking the success box for Alba at the top of the heap is we move riders on to bigger and better teams. So
mm,
Kate Richardson, who went from the first year, um, Haley's having a fantastic season this year. She's not going to be riding for us next year. That's very sad in one respect, but
mm,
that's success. That's what success is. Um, secondary to that is the results. Like I say, if you get the development right, the results come. So you can sit and reflect and look back at the results you have had, and that's great. If you can do that. But ultimately, it is that. It seems a weird thing to say, celebrating the success of losing your best riders, but that is what success looks like.
yeah, it's kind of is like, yeah, if you've been successful, then you'll have, next to zero riders and no one
Yeah,
returns. Like,
I mean, that's not going to happen
paradoxical.
because it comes back to the structure
Mm,
of the team that you need to. It's almost like this conveyor belt that you've got the more experienced riders ready to make the next step, but then you've got raw talent who come at the end, and they might be a 3-year project. So we're, if we get this right, we're never going to be in the position where we just lose all of our riders in one go. That won't
of
happen.
course.
We're looking to 1, 2, maybe 3 riders
Hmm.
go off in that environment at the end of the year, and everybody else is just moving along, and other people are coming back in again. So it's if you get the balance right, it makes it a little easier.
Yeah, of course. And is there ever a future state where Alba is riding in the World Tour, like permanently, or are you just like, it makes sense as a development, almost feeder team, if you will?
Yeah, never say never, but yeah, we set up ourselves up as development, and that's what we want to continue to do. But there's all sorts of discussions and things fly around. Somebody wants to step forward and give us 5 million, then I could do something with it. But it's that's not the overall objective.
Mm,
Right now we will sit doing what we are doing, but success in being able to deliver things does breed other opportunities. So I mean, there could be other things happening in the future, but it's that's not the priority.
yeah, of course. And how are you in general finding the step up to UCI continental level? just in terms of, I guess, is it more difficult logistically as well as just from a race perspective of them being harder races?
Yeah. So we, when the team was first formed, we had a 5-year plan,
Hmm.
and that 5-year plan had us UCI in year 4. We brought that forward a year because, whilst we're supporting British Elite Racing and it's in a reasonable shape, certainly the women's side of things, there's not enough. So we were we already did some European racing last year,
Mm.
and this year, even if we were not UCI, we were going to be looking to do quite a lot more in Europe. So, given we were going to do quite a lot more of that, we may as well make the step to UCI because it makes it a little bit easier in getting into those races and things you might want to do. So that came forward a year. So the challenge is, from a racing perspective, we're ready for it, and I think we've shown that. Even at Class One UCI races, we've been at the sharp end of races and performed quite well. So I think, even though it's different, and the girls need to be prepared for that, taking that step into that level of races has been okay. I would say the biggest challenge is logistically, um, for primarily for a couple of reasons. One, because we're focused on delivering that development, we want to spend as much as our budget as humanly possible on racing and
Mm.
doing exactly that. So to be able to deliver that, we run pretty lean staff wise,
Yeah.
to try and just ensure that there is much of the cash does go into racing. Plus the fact we're, home base is Northeast Scotland, so whilst not all of the riders there, that's where our service course is. That's where we're based. So we have a long trip to anywhere.
Yeah.
So that just adds to the challenges, and when you couple that with being quite lean from a staff standpoint, yeah, it's pretty testing sometimes. But we just have to manage that. That's fine.
Yeah, and you mentioned being quite lean from a staff perspective, but there is a recent signing, I believe, announced this morning
Uh,
at time of recording. Anna
yeah.
Shackley is going to be joining
Yes.
once she takes her DS exam in Aigle. Like, how did that come about? Obviously, it's a huge loss from a racing point of view that she's had to retire, but a huge gain for yourselves in terms of a director sportif um, who's been to the very top.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was tragic that her career's been cut short because it was such a promising career. But I've known Anna for many years. I've worked with Anna through my time at Scottish Cycling as a youth, a junior, um,
Mm,
before she then stepped off and went to SD Works. And following the news she's had to take, she's thought about that as to what she wants to do. She decided she wants to stay in the sport, and we spoke a few weeks ago and said, well, I've had a few conversations. She'll be looking to go back to the world tour as
mm.
a DS once she's got her qualifications and got some experience. So it was quite a good fit that she could come to us now. She brings a wealth of world tour experience. She's been through what these girls are trying to do now. She brings a huge amount for from a racing perspective, from a development perspective, so it fits in very well with what we're doing. And on the flip side of that, we can introduce her to being a DS and give her some experience up front before she gets into that. So it was a very good fit once we spoke and said, well, let's just get on with it.
Yeah, I guess in a way, it feels like it fits your ethos as well in terms of development that you're developing staff and
Yeah,
success again. I assume is that eventually she leaves you. Um,
for sure. I
yeah.
mean, if all goes according to plan, she'll be with us for the remainder of the season, and we're going elsewhere for next season.
Mm,
So, and that's absolutely fine because we, both Anna and ourselves benefit from her being involved for the remainder of the season. So it's a win-win for everybody, and it's a huge boost for the girls in the team
mm.
to have Anna there, being able to tell them firsthand what things are like. in the World Tour, to be able to bring her race experience at the World Tour to things they are doing now and things we're trying to build on in building that team structure in how we race. So it's a great situation. Really pleased.
Yeah. Well, it's fantastic news, and equally fantastic news was the fact that you'll be involved in the. I'm going to get the name wrong already because they've recently signed a sponsor, but I'm just going to call it the Women's Tour of Britain.
Yeah,
Um, sorry to. Is it Lloyd's? I guess.
it's Lloyd's.
Who's
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In my head, it's Lloyd's TSB, but it's not
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's two different
yeah,
companies now.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, you'll be involved in the Women's Tour of Britain by, I guess, virtue of being a UCI Continental team. Um, what are your hopes and ambitions for that? I guess, kind of secondarily, like how soon did you find out? Because I assume you found out before the press release, and
yeah,
then what goes into the planning and selection of riders, because you've got a team that's bigger than six, so you can't take everyone. So
yeah.
how do you go about everything involved, really?
Yeah, so I mean, it's an important step for us just because it's a World Tour race on home soil. So I mean,
Mm,
it's something everybody wants to do, and I guess the British-based UCI teams this year in the fortunate position that we're all riding, with the on-off nature of the Women's Tour of Britain and change
mm,
of organizer and things like that. There's only 4 World Tour teams taking part next week because their calendars have been set. It was once it was firm, it was too late. So that's a plus point for all of us UCI teams to be able to do that and ride at that level. So it is important. Yes, we knew before the press release came out. I mean, as soon as it was back on, I'd been doing quite a lot of lobbying to try and ensure that we did get an opportunity to ride because we were disappointed not to ride London.
mm,
Um, so I wanted to make sure we were riding in this, and yes, it has helped that there's not so many World Tour teams. So that's an important thing for us to do. And when it comes to selection, it all comes back to this development piece again because it's
mm.
something that's very important for us. Is we will not put riders in races they are not ready to be in. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're going into a race and you're going to win it, but you need to be able to ride that race in such a way that you're going to learn from it.
Yeah.
So you're in the race, you're going to finish it, and you're going to do that. So automatically, that takes away a number of our riders because they're not ready to ride at that level just yet.
Hmm.
So it makes the selection conundrum a little easier.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there's still selection, and that is one of the tougher things really when it comes to races like this because we have some disappointed riders this week, and I it's the team is selected to be one. It's the right thing for the rider at their point of development, but also in a race such as this is a little bit different to the rest of our program in that it's in the spotlight. It's a big race. We want to make a good showing of ourselves. So there is an element of, well, we need to sort of pick what is the strongest, most cohesive team that's going to be able to do the best thing in the race. And once we've been through that, I mean, I guess that comes down to me. That's
Hmm.
my job, and then it's also having further discussion with all of the riders to say yes, you're riding, or you're not riding, and this is why you're not riding. And it just needs to be managed that in that way.
Do you find those conversations easy? Is that something that's
It's never easy. I'm
mm,
comfortable doing it because I've been around the sport so long, and it's the nature of the beast,
mm,
and trying to manage some of that disappointment and what might come on. So it's just part of the job. I
yeah,
wouldn't call them easy, but I'm comfortable having those conversations. I'm comfortable with the decisions that are made, and I'm comfortable having the conversations. And I sincerely hope that once you've had those conversations, that everybody understands the position we're in, and we all just move forward.
yeah. I think it's great that you're providing that why, kind
Yeah,
of almost, because I'm in a position where I've been applying for jobs, and
yeah,
honestly, like, just being told no,
yeah,
it is no good for anyone really, because it's like, well, what did I do wrong? Like, or what could I do better? And
Yeah,
having that closure helps.
feedback's important, and
Mm,
it fits just generally within the ethos of the team that
yeah.
we there should be feedback from everything. There's a lot of analysis of races, self-analysis, self-reflection from riders that we then discuss because you unpick everything, and people need to get to in a position where they're not afraid to make mistakes. In fact, they want to go and make mistakes because that's the quickest way to learn.
Mm,
And I think if you get into that sort of mindset, it makes these sort of things easier. That, well, this is the situation, this is what we're looking at, this is why, this is where we're going, and everybody walks away from that on the same page. Yes, disappointment, but understanding of everything, and that's important.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, I guess I haven't got many more questions to ask, which is good in a way.
Yeah,
Just what are the rest of the aims for this season? Obviously, I know there's the overarching aim of
yeah.
developing riders, but what's the rest of the season looking like after the Tour of Britain?
So after the Tour of Britain, we've got a couple of weeks before the national champs at the end of June, which will focus on primarily British riders. I mean, we have one Irish rider, one American who obviously
Mhm,
can't ride, but everybody else will be riding the British champs, so that will be the focus. And then, as I say, we are going to we do support British elite racing. So through July, the National Circuit Series, the City Centre crits start.
mm,
So we'll pretty much spend all of July in the UK because there's crits every week. Through that, plus some more of the National Road Series. So July will be pretty much UK based, doing those. We then move into October. There's some more National Road Series, but then we have another block of racing in Europe, Belgium, France, and Germany through August and into September. And then our season effectively finishes later on in September.
mm. That's awesome. So, how can people keep up with the goings on of the team on social media, for example?
Yeah, so social media is pretty good. That is up to date. There is a website that tends to lag a little bit. That's another function of running pretty lean. It's something we're looking to address at the minute to have somebody looking after both the socials and the website full time. But the socials tend to be pretty much up to date with what we're up to, what the results are. So whether that be on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, on all of those platforms, and that's probably the best way to keep tabs on everything.
Awesome. Well, right as we're speaking now, there will be on this video different yeah, just a screenshot of each of those places so that people can find them. I'll also put it in the show notes, so it's easy for people to
Yeah,
find you, because I think it's a great project. I really do actually like the website, how it has the flags,
yeah.
'cause, for two of your riders it's like, are you, is it an English like locality one?
Yeah.
One's like Lancashire, and then
We've got a Lancashire and a Yorkshire
is it okay?
in there, so yeah.
Yeah, because
So
I think the one I couldn't figure out was Daisy Barnes's one.
that's Cumbria.
That'll be it. Yeah,
So I didn't even know that was the flag of Cumbria until Daisy said, "There's a Cumbrian flag." So
yeah,
yeah,
we've had it like, I was at Lincoln GP,
yeah,
and I stood near some people, and they were like pointing at a flag on the hotel near the finish. And they're like, "Oh, what's that a flag of?" I was
yeah,
like, "Well, we're in Lincoln.
yeah,
Just I happen to know it's Lincolnshire anyway,
yeah,
because
yeah. That's right.
that's
Yeah,
where I'm from, so
yeah,
it made
yeah,
sense." But it's just
yeah.
funny, like,
Yeah. It just gives them a bit of additional sort of identity. So
mm,
we've done that on there. I mean, it shifts when you comes to flags and UCI paperwork. It can only be the Union Jack, but they have their own individual little flags on the bikes and the helmets and everything, which just gives them a bit of more of home feeling.
yeah, that's kind of cool. I should look out for that on the coverage when we watch the
Yeah,
Tour of Britain.
yeah,
Um, all the best for the race, and for everything else. It's a great project, and hopefully speak to you again soon.
yeah. No, thanks very much for your time.
Bro.